know. Well, I'm an active member of the Portuguese CDG Association, as well as the Spanish CDG Association also. And I'm also representing the Spanish Federation of Rare Diseases at the Spanish Committee for People with Disabilities at the Accessibility Universal Group. And in addition, my husband and I, we are both architects. So today, I'm here as Martin's mother. About the diagnosis of a rare disease, well, I remember a lot of time about a text of Emily Kingsley, that he's a writer of the Sesame Street, I suppose you all know, that talks about the experience of having children with disability. And it is a metaphoric text that says something like that. After preparing a great trip to a wonderful country, suddenly you've arrived to a quite different one. So you have to start to learn a new language, you have to buy new maps, and there you must stay and learn to live. First out, well, the big question, how could this happen? No. What does CDG mean? What are CDG implications? Is there a treatment? What can we do? So in these 4 years, I think that I've passed through three steps. The first one, thinking on how to improve present, and this talks about the immediately health needs. The second one, about how to improve an immediate future through patient advocacy movement. And last one, how to improve a long-term future through a professional life. So the first one, health. Well, I think you all have passed through these same things. Look for an expert, learn about CDG, look for a general treatment, and also cover all medical and rehabilitation needs with all million therapies, and spending hours and hours to went to all million doctors and rehabilitation centers. So this meant quite big change in our daily life, because normally this means that at least one of the parents has to adapt his professional life. Sometimes, like in my case, I have almost to stop working, at least in the first time, and pass more than 7 hours a day went to all several doctors and therapy sessions, and help my son in all activities that he's not able to do in an autonomous way. Step 2, patient advocacy movement, thinking how to improve an immediate future. So I've realized that our experience as affected families can also represent hundreds of other families in this world of being rare. So after realize that there is so much to improve a rare disease medical assistance and quality of life, as a CDG patient advocate, I've decided to support CDG awareness and dissemination projects and investigation, CDG associations, and rare diseases national and international institutions activities like in FEDER or Eurordis. And why? Well, I think it's quite obvious. Well, to learn, to be able to change things, to achieve tools to improve my son's quality of life as well as then other families, and point out that, yes, only with an organization background we can have a voice on the national and international level. So these are just some of the activities that I've participated these last years at the national and international level. And it was quite interesting because you can meet other associations with similar problems, and you can change experience, and it's really quite interesting, and you don't feel so alone. Step 2. No. So, besides the special medical needs, as architects, certainly we've started understanding the huge number of persons with some kind of disability that used to suffer restrictions in their daily life to access to the same places and activities than other people. So we start to learn a new guide about disability issue and the importance of the accessibility in our next future. As the Luis Cayo Pérez Bueno says, he's the president of the Spanish Federation of Disabled People. Universal accessibility, understood in its broadest sense, it is the big issue of the normalization process and full citizenship of people with disabilities. More than employment, education, social services issues traditionally associated with disability, accessibility should be today the axis of disability public policies and all action and intervention, public and private, in this area. And why? Well, I'd like to let you, I think this is an important message, that accessibility, it's a social right. It is one of the principal guides of the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities of the United Nations, signed in 2006. And it's true that this was signed 2 days ago, but all signing countries should now commit with these principles to change our cities and urban areas into accessible places. And this map, you can see in green and dark green, there are all the countries that have signed it, and in light green, the countries which have signed it but not ratified. So there are a lot of countries. And another interesting thing, it's that convention started to change a lot of theories. For example, a very important one is that disability, it's not seen as derived from the condition of the person, but it's the result of a set of factors, included urban conditions. And what this means? That disability, it's not on the person, but on environments. And this is quite interesting point of view. If our environment is adapted, we don't have a disability. Well, about the Spanish situation, for example, there are quite important numbers. For example, there are almost 4 million of people with some disability. It's a huge number that perhaps none of us have this number on our head, no? 20% of homes have at least one disabled person. It is supposed also that in 2050, in Europe, almost 40% of population will be over 65 years, which is equivalent to over 100 million people. Furthermore, it is estimated that 50% of the European population has some limitations in vision, hearing, mobility, cognition, and so and so. So our society is getting older and older, and these numbers will be bigger and bigger. So it's quite important that our environment start to adapt to this new reality. Universal accessibility definition, for you all to understand, the Leon Dow Spanish law says that it's the condition of environments, processes, goods, products, and services, as well as objects or instruments, tools, and devices to be understandable, usable, and practicable by all persons in safety and comfort in the more autonomous and natural possible way. And that's how we start to arrive to our last step, the professional one. So, as an architect, we start to think, how could we improve our projects in this material? And we start to realize that there is so much to do. There is a lot of things to do. So, as example, like urban environment, no? How do we understand it if we have a disability like physical, visual, auditory, cognitive, and so and so. And that's how it has born our new office that names ECAPAS, Accessibility and Design for All. Its goal is to contribute to improving the quality of life of society regardless of the different capabilities of each individual and facilitate their social inclusion, education, and employment. So our work is developing rehabilitation projects that enhance accessibility to natural and built environments, for example, architecture, and we also start to do investigation because because we start to understand that we still need a lot of theories also. And for example, we've done 2 investigations, accessible playgrounds and accessible digital home. And why accessible playgrounds? Because it was the first big difficulty that we start to feel with our own son. The difficulty of a child with some kind of disability that desires to go to a playground and he's not able. So, in a brief, I'm going to present you a brief resume of this investigation. Accessible playgrounds, not seen only for children with disabilities, but we were talking about a place where children and adults with or without disabilities could play together. Playgrounds are often not adapted for all kinds of children. However, there are friendly places to share experience with other children. There is also a right to play. That's what says the Principle 7 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child of the United Nations. Child shall enjoy themselves by playing and recreating. This should be heading for the same purpose as education. Society and the public authorities shall effort to promote the enjoyment of this right. Although, at this time, there is a lot of security regulations implemented in the game elements, but we didn't find out no specific indication about accessibility. So the goal, it's necessary to create guidelines to meet the demand for children with disabilities about what can be considered an accessible playground. Children's park should be a place without barriers, and it should be a social objective. A playground has to be an inclusive place so that children could have an opportunity of having fun together and learning to know their differences. This is an image of a good example of an accessible playground in Madrid, and it is quite interesting because it has a variety of types of games that allows children, for example, with a wheelchair or a walker to get in and to use all elements. It has also ramps. It has rubber flooring, and so all children can play. It has also like sonorous games, and it is a great example of integration between ages games without discriminating against children with disabilities. This is another good example. It seems like a normal playground, although it has ramps and an interesting flooring, adapted swings. So how did we start this research? So in order to know the reality of parents with children with disabilities, it was carried out a survey about accessible playgrounds. In this survey, we had the collaboration of several parents with children with disability associations and also educational centers. And this helped us to get a lot of nice conclusions. For example, not only about the type of games, but also with materials. For example, the floor material. And we find out, for example, the rubber. It can be used by 100% of those survived. Sand, it can be used by 50% of those survived. In gravel, it can be used by 30% of those survived. So the conclusion, the one and only material that actually allows universal accessibility in playgrounds, it's rubber. Some conclusions: no access, no accessibility. The inclusive parks have a pedagogical importance as they allow learning about other children's needs. Without adapted games for children with disabilities, they will not come to the parks and not only will be marginalized in society, but also other kinds will not know of their existence, creating a future misunderstanding on an issue as sensitive as the acceptance of disability. So we've made a study of all commercial elements that exist, and we have divided in 3 grades. The first one is games that are not adapted for children with disabilities. The grade 2, that we've put a name, You Can. Small adjustments that create accessible games on the market that don't lose playability and adventure. And the last one, Let Yourself Go. There are some specific games that we propose its use for a very specific cases, because are totally adapted only for children with disabilities. And finally, we've also developed our first playground model that right now it's waiting to be constructed. So nowadays, Martin, he's 4 years old, and there is a long way to go and play. Thank you to Vanessa and all our inspiring families.